Hi everyone, it's me. So a few weeks ago I put a poll on my channel community post asking which character I should do a analysis on, and based on the people who did vote in the poll, Shadow the Hedgehog won. And there's actually a pretty good reason to it, only because Shadow's a popular character, more popular than Silver. But Silver I will eventually do a video on. I'm not actually sure when, but for this video I'm going to be talking about Shadow the Hedgehog. So for this video here, I'm wearing my Shadow hoodie. This is like my new favorite hoodie. And I'm basically going to be breaking down the details, talking about like Shadow's backstory and character development. Now I know probably every single YouTuber ever has already covered this subject already, but I basically wanted to mainly talk about his character and stuff. And I briefly talked about him when I was talking about my predictions for Sonic 3 in previous, in 2 videos I made. My one video when I reviewed the movies and my predictions for Sonic 3 and the updates regarding the movies. And we got even more updates on it because a few days ago I went on my Twitter and saw that we finally got a tease of Shadow. We don't know his actual official reveal, but they had the stand-in of the character, you know, the stand-ins they put in for the Sonic movies, and they revealed it, and it kind of gives us like a little glimpse of what Shadow could look like in the film. Of course, we only see his shoes and his gloves, but it's very well done. And we even got like what a logo could look like for the third movie, which is a reference to the Sonic Adventure 2 logo, with the top and the bottom supposed to represent Sonic's quills and Shadow's quills. So it seems like they're going to go all out with the Adventure 2 stuff for the third film, but I basically already covered that in previous 2 videos. So I'm mainly going to be talking about Shadow's character and his origin. Not Sonic Origins, but like with the Sonic series.
Everything has an origin.
So let's talk about Shadow's backstory. So Shadow was created 50 years ago on the Space Colony Ark by Professor Gerald Robotnik, which would be the grandfather of Dr. Eggman, and he apparently had a granddaughter, Maria, and Maria and Eggman would basically be cousins, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, though they don't actually interact, like they never interacted, because this stuff takes place like 50 years before the events of like the Sonic games and stuff, like before all that, I'm assuming. So basically, Professor Gerald ended up making Project Shadow as a way to possibly cure Maria's illness, because Maria always wanted to go down to Earth, though she was unable to because she had an illness called NIDS, which is supposed to be a reference to the real-life illness AIDS, which left her weak and everything, and she was unable to go down to the Earth. She wasn't allowed to. And even though she was getting treatment, attention, and everything like that, she continued to get weaker over time. And then this led to the creation of Shadow the Hedgehog. And Shadow is basically ageless and immortal, meaning he doesn't age, given that he doesn't look like he ages, and basically he lives on as like an eternal life form, the ultimate life form to be specific, because as stated in like Sonic X, if you want to include this part in, basically the people aboard the Space Colony Ark would kind of test like the concept of eternal life or creating the ultimate life form. And this led to, of course, Shadow's creation and everything, though there are some suspicions on which one's the actual Project Shadow, but we will get to that later. So basically, after Shadow was created, him and Maria would often spend their time looking down on the Earth on the Space Colony Ark, wondering what it was like to go there. And even Shadow was curious on what it was like on the Earth and what his purpose in life was, which is why Shadow has a lot to his character, because he wonders what his purpose is and who he is, why he's there, and everything like that. So as time went on, the government basically grew suspicious of Project Shadow, or Shadow the Hedgehog, because they thought he was like dangerous and everything. And it was later stated in the Shadow the Hedgehog game, which we will talk about later on, that basically Gerald wanted to use him so that he could basically defend him from the Black Arms, which is a different plot in the Shadow the Hedgehog game, which I don't know too much about, so I might not cover as much as you may think. But yeah, they bring that up in like the Shadow the Hedgehog game, but we will get to that later. So basically, the government eventually decides to shut everything down and basically remove everyone and everything related to the project. They decide to shut down Project Shadow altogether, and this apparently leads to the raid, where basically Shadow, Maria, and of course Gerald end up going on the run from the gun soldier's gun. And apparently Shadow and Maria are told to go escape in some escape pods for them to go down to Earth for safety, though unfortunately Maria is not able to make it because she ends up getting shot by one of the gun soldiers. And yes, this does actually happen in the game. They don't show it gruesome at all or anything. Like, no blood is shown. Like, I can guarantee you they've never showed it in the series. And they show this, like, 3 separate times. They show it in Adventure 2, they show it in Shadow the Hedgehog, and if you want to count it, Sonic X, though that only includes the Japanese version. But in Adventure 2, it's actually a very odd case because the Japanese and the English are 2 completely different versions. They don't remove her death in the English version like they did in Sonic X, which is, of course, a different subject for a different video. But she dies in both versions, but it's not, like, implied that well in the English version. Because what happens in the Japanese version is that basically Shadow has a flashback to, of course, when Gun was chasing them, like, fine before they escape. He has, like, this flashback when the police are onto him, when he's apparently framing Sonic in Adventure 2. And he ends up thinking back on Maria. We hear a gunshot go off, and Shadow screams Maria's name, and he gets locked into an escape pod, and Maria tells him to do it for her, for all the people on the planet, bring hope to humanity, and he gets launched down to Earth because after Maria ended up getting shot before she said goodbye and died, she ended up saying, "Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog," and basically wanted Shadow to bring hope to humanity, help the planet, help the people, and everything, because she was very optimistic in her personality and stuff. And the English didn't actually include that. Well, they did include, like, the stuff Maria said, but they didn't really imply her death that well, because we hear the music to Throw It All Away, that one track from Adventure 2, and basically he thinks back on the flashback, though we don't hear the gunshot go off, which kind of leads to a little bit confusion, but we still do hear Shadow scream Maria's name as if she, like, got hurt or something. And basically she says the exact same things in the English and stuff and all that, and, like, they don't show it very well in the English version. Like, she still dies in the English version, but they don't really imply it very well. Though they do a better job showing what actually happens in, like, the Shadow the Hedgehog game, which I will end up showing you in this clip here.
Maria!
So it plays out about the same as Adventure 2, but it's a little bit different because it's kind of told, like, from a different perspective. It's shown in a different perspective because it shows them running down the hallway in the Space Colony Ark, of course, and Maria following behind Shadow, and we actually see the gun soldiers this time right behind them and everything, and then we eventually see one holding a gun, screen face to white, we hear a gunshot, and Shadow screams Maria's name. And everyone was devastated by Maria's death. Shadow especially, because he was the one who saw her death, like, right in front of him, and was traumatized by the whole event. And Professor Gerald ended up going mad with grief over what Gunn did after killing his granddaughter, and he decided to brainwash Shadow, twist up his memories, so that he would end up seeking revenge instead of bringing hope to humanity, which sets up the events of Adventure 2, where he's awoken 50 years later, because he was put into status for 50 years and then is awakened by Dr. Eggman 50 years later as a way to apparently, like, take over the world and stuff. And, like, as the events of the game played out, Shadow is basically treated as Sonic's faker. But he's more than just a rival. It's him trying to find out, like, what his purpose is, who he is, and everything, which they show back and forth in cutscenes of the game. Even Rouge, especially, because Rouge ends up going into, like, the files to see if Shadow is apparently the real ultimate life form, though that is actually debatable through various Sonic theories, though we will actually talk about that later. So, like, Shadow is kind of used as a way to be on, like, Eggman's side and taking over and everything, and them collecting all the Chaos Emeralds, though on the opposite end, he's trying to find out, like, who he is and everything, and, like, his purpose and all that sort of stuff, because we do see a couple flashbacks of Maria and stuff, because he tends to have flashbacks of Maria, like, throughout the game and everything, including, of course, the Shadow the Hedgehog game and everything, and, like, as the events go on, he's, like, trying to find out who he is, and, like, they're trying to learn more about the Project Shadow. The Rouge ends up opening a file saying what the actual ultimate life form could be, also known as Project Shadow. So Project Shadow is not specifically named that because of Shadow's name, but rather just, like, a working title, like what working, like code names could be and stuff, if you want to call it that. And Shadow was basically named later on, I assume, which is why basically there was lots of debates and everything. We kind of learn more about the Bio-Lizard later, but we will talk about that later. It's a different subject. So Rouge ends up finding a file and everything about what could be the ultimate life form and how Shadow could possibly not be the actual life form. And she's like, all your memories might be fake. And then Shadow's like, even if my memories are fake, I am still Shadow the Hedgehog and everything. Though I do not believe his memories to be fake and everything. The only thing I do believe to be fake is, of course, having to seek revenge, because that was twisted and it manipulated him to seek that and everything. I don't believe everything else was just completely, fake and didn't happen, because I feel like if you said that, it would basically take away everything that his character built on. It basically take away all his character development. But I do believe all the stuff on the Space Colony arc actually did happen and stuff. It actually did. And no one can convince me otherwise. Nothing else can convince me of that and everything. But, of course, various people have different thoughts on it. And this is even, dove in more with Sonic Heroes and stuff, trying to find out if he is actually Shadow and stuff, like Shadow the Hedgehog and all that, and even the other game, like I mentioned before, but we will get to that later and stuff. And basically, Shadow is apparently treated as, of course, Sonic's rival. I found you, faker. That's actually become a huge meme and stuff. And, by the end of the game and stuff, when the Space Colony arc is about to crash down to the Earth and everything, because after they collected all 7 Chaos Emeralds, like Eggman did, Team Dark and all that, they end up activating, of course, the Eclipse Cannon, which is going to crash down into the planet, and we see a message of Gerald Robotnik being held in hostage and everything before he apparently dies, with this message talking about his final revenge and everything, and how he was going to get humanity after what they ended up doing to Maria. And, it was all out of, revenge and everything like that, and basically, Amy ends up giving Shadow, a pep talk on how he needs to, help the people. Also, another flashback of Maria in the game and everything. He has so many flashbacks of Maria, having to try to find out, his purpose and everything like that. And basically, he's convinced to, take out the Bio-Lizard and everything, which is apparently supposed to be the ultimate life form prototype, which I'm assuming basically they created that and then created Shadow as told by various, theories and stuff having to do with the Sonic lore and everything and continuity, which it doesn't actually sound that unbelievable of having to create the Bio-Lizard and then go on to Shadow the Hedgehog and everything like that. So he takes out the Bio-Lizard. They use Chaos Control to get rid of it. It Chaos Controls onto the Eclipse Cannon, which causes it more weight on it to go down to the Earth and everything. And they have to stop it so they can save the Earth. So Sonic and Shadow go super, play, live, and learn. And they end up taking out the Bio-Lizard, which Live and Learn is basically considered one of the best songs using the climax of any Sonic game and everything, and reasons why people want it in Sonic 3, though I'm not actually sure if they're going to include it. I mean, it would actually be surprising and everything and all that. So they take out the Bio-Lizard, and they basically have to still teleport the Space Colony arc by using Chaos Control, which funny story, when I first heard about Shadow the Hedgehog and hearing about Chaos Control when looking into this stuff with Sonic, I actually believed that Chaos Control was a power. Well, it is a power. I thought it was some sort of blast power or something, though that's Chaos Sphere, and Chaos Control is just a way for them to teleport and stuff, as every single Sonic character does it. Sonic, Shadow, Silver, you can basically name anyone, because Shadow uses Chaos Control throughout the whole entire game and everything. And, I actually thought that. But, anyways, moving away from that. So, one last time, Shadow hears Maria say, you have to help them and everything. In his head and everything. Because, of course, that sticks with him and everything when he, of course, recovered his memories on how she wanted, basically, Shadow to help the people instead of seek revenge. And basically, Sonic's you ready? And then they're Chaos Control. They finally teleport the Space Colony arc back into orbit and prevent it from crashing down to the Earth, saving the Earth. Though, unfortunately, Shadow apparently falls down to the Earth and dies, saying, Maria, this is what you wanted, right? And, of course, we are given the last scene of the game of Adventure 2, and it shows Sonic going back up to the Space Colony arc and showing them one of Shadow's inhibitor rings that apparently fell off when he was falling down to the Earth, because Shadow's inhibitor rings allow him to basically limit the amount of power he uses without getting tired, and when he basically removes them, he goes all out power and he could easily get tired, which probably explains why he ended up falling down to the Earth and supposedly dying. Supposedly, I say. And basically these characters have a moment to reflect on Shadow and what he did and everything, and how he was a great guy and everything, and eventually all the Sonic characters decide to go home, with Sonic saying, of course, "Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog," and the game ends. And apparently, Shadow supposedly died at the end of the game, or so we thought, because of how popular Shadow was in the game, he was actually brought back because, like, apparently, like, when Sega ended up, like, making, of course, the Shadow the Hedgehog game, Sonic Heroes and everything, they reintroduced Shadow back to the series, because, like, not everyone may know this, but for those who don't know, Shadow was originally only supposed to appear in Adventure 2. That was supposed to be his only appearance in the series, but because of how he became a huge fan favorite and was very popular with a lot of fans, he was brought back to Sonic games. And if Shadow wasn't brought back in the Sonic games, the Sonic series probably wouldn't be as popular as it is like now and everything, because even though, of course, over the years Sonic has had a rocky past with games and everything, it continues to still do well to this day, especially with all the stuff that's came out in like 2020 and everything. But like, Shadow was brought back in Sonic Heroes, and apparently they imply that he was put in status when he fell down into the earth and apparently supposedly died, but we will actually get to that in a little bit. But like, Shadow is basically considered one of the series' most popular characters outside of Sonic and everything. With me personally, I like Shadow as a character and everything, and my brother also likes Shadow too, his favorite character. So, I don't know too much about the plot of Sonic Heroes, but I do know the thing having to do with Shadow, like part of the plot having to revolve around Team Dark and everything, with Rouge, Shadow, and Omega, which I don't know if Omega was new to the game or not, but they brought back Shadow in Sonic Heroes, which came out in 2003, 2 years after Adventure 2 came out. And they end up finding Shadow in status. Rouge finds Shadow in status in like this like little area and everything. It's like this little like capsule dome thing, I think. And they ended up like reviving him again. Though there is suspicions on whether that is the Shadow that fell down and supposedly died and was the same Shadow from Adventure 2. Because in the same room where they found him, there are a bunch of other Shadow clones or androids. And this often leads to the theory of people saying that all the Shadows that, or the Shadow that comes back after Adventure 2 is apparently a clone or an android. Like, there's theories revolving around that so much. And even in the game, they say that, like, the original must exist somewhere, and if you know about cloning, and even at one point, Shadow, I think he says this, I'm not sure if this actually, he says this in the game, but he said, even if I'm not real, I am Shadow the Hedgehog. I think they say that in Heroes, I can't really remember. But they end up setting up this whole thing about whether Shadow is the real Shadow and not the android or the clone or whatever. Like, if they didn't bring that up into the series, people wouldn't be theorizing on it. But now we get to the one game that actually dives more into his story, Shadow the Hedgehog. So Shadow's story is dived more into the 2005 game Shadow the Hedgehog, which was created as a game to basically explore more about Shadow's origins and everything. And it was released for the GameCube, PS2, and original Xbox system. And I don't own any of those versions because I don't have any of those systems. But this game was not very well received at all. It had a lot of negative reviews and it was not well received by critics. But at least it gave us more inside, like, information about, like, Shadow. It gave us a lot more having to do with his character and everything. So, with this game is infamous for basically it being an E10 up game, though it does include the use of firearms, and also because it includes language.
Don't let the black creature. Damn, they got away.
Damn, we've been detected.
Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?
That's the only word that they actually use in the game, and the game is still rated E10 and up apparently. Though I don't know if like the E10 rating wasn't as harsh back then as it was now, because the game came out in 2005, so I don't know if like they weren't as strict with it as they were now. Though they were originally going to make the game teen rated and everything and all that. Like, they were originally going to make the like game like more for like a mature audience and everything. Well, not mature, but teen rated and everything, though they went through a few development changes and everything and all that. Though it still does include, of course, the use of firearms and of course the use of like apparently swearing. Well, not really swearing. Like, I don't really think you can consider it too much of a swear word, but like the memes actually went all over the internet, especially with the fourth Chaos Emerald meme. Like, that's become a huge meme online. But anyways, with this game, they end up diving more into Shadow, trying to find out who he is, because he has amnesia. He can't remember anything, which could be because of the fall that he, of course, had at the end of Adventure 2 when he supposedly died. I like to imagine in my headcanon that Shadow ended up surviving the fall, though later in the game's true ending, because this game has like 10 different endings, we actually learn about like how he apparently survived and everything, though we will actually get to that much later. So Shadow can't remember everything. He's wondering like who he is, like who is he, and why he can't remember everything, and who is this Maria. He says that like in the game and everything, and basically this game like kind of explores like how like he's trying to find out who he is, and he apparently is associated with the Black Arms and Black Doom and everything because he has part of Black Doom's DNA in him when he was being created, which they added that into Shadow the Hedgehog. It wasn't shown in anything prior. It wasn't shown in anything with Adventure 2, and we actually learn more about like the commander and everything, who apparently grew up with Maria and ended up seeing Shadow's creation and everything, and also learned of Maria's death. And he's the only other one who actually knows about like Shadow's true past and everything, because he's still like there in the game working for Gunn and everything 50 years later, like fast forward 50 years later. And we learn more details about that throughout the game. And what like Black Doom does is that Black Doom says that if you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, he says to Shadow, if you collect all 7 like Chaos Emeralds, it will unlock like all the answers and everything. And over the course of the game, Shadow basically has like to like find these Chaos Emeralds and everything. And of course, infamous internet meme here. But like he goes over the course of the story trying to find out who he is. He interacts with other characters. The Chaotix also get involved. Team Chaotix get involved because they find a video file of Gerald ended up saying how he's basically created Shadow to take out like the Black Arms. Well, maybe not that, probably just to help like humanity and stuff. And Maria's in that video too, because they include Maria in the game, like with her death and everything, which there is an entire level like dedicated to them like escaping and everything and all that, showing like Shadow and Maria escaping, though I think that's told more as like a flashback and everything. And it also again shows Maria collapsing onto the floor and Shadow getting launched down to the earth and stuff. And like in the game's like true ending, he eventually takes out the Black Arms and stuff. Shadow does, and Eggman basically reveals that he apparently saved Shadow using his robots, though people also theorize that's not the real case. Though I actually want it to be the case because Sega hasn't actually said that's not canon. Because if you know anything about Sega, they change everything. But over the course of the game, also I should add this, that Eggman was basically gaslighting Shadow into thinking he was a copy of himself, because Shadow also, again, saw the androids, because there's a whole bunch of androids that look exactly like Shadow. Not like the ones in IDW where they have like, the androids have like this black and yellow color scheme, but ones that actually resemble Shadow and everything. And Eggman basically tries gaslighting Shadow into thinking he's a copy of himself to go back onto his side like he did in Adventure 2. Surprise, surprise. But over the course of the story, like, Eggman says to like Shadow, you have no past. But Shadow has to like stay focused and everything and not listen to him because he's just trying to trick him, which is said in this clip right here.
You have no past!
What?
Don't listen to him. He's just trying to trick you. You've got to focus. Destroy him and let's get out of here.
But eventually, like, Eggman, like I said before, ends up telling the truth to Shadow that he was rescued and is in fact the real Shadow and not the android, which basically has like Shadow like take out Black Doom once and for all, because it's revealed in this game that the Eclipse Cannon was originally created to take out Black Doom when he arrived like 50 years later and stuff and all that. And that was like Shadow's true purpose, was to like protect everyone. Like that was his like true purpose and everything as a character and all that. So eventually Shadow defeats Black Doom for good and everything, and Shadow takes one last look at the picture of Gerald and Maria, this iconic picture here, and Shadow eventually decides to leave his past behind him and move forward, and he tosses away the photo at the end of the game. Like, I know this game has like 10 different endings, like online you have the hero side, the dark side, the normal side, all that. Like, it has, like 10 different, like, pieces to it and all that, though I don't really get it. I know about, like, the other 3 endings and the true ending of the game. But, like, Shadow eventually moves on from his past, which is why they don't bring it up in the series anymore, because it basically shows how, like, over the course of these games, especially in the early 2000s, like, it basically explores Shadow's, like, character and everything, like, how he evolved as a character, and eventually decided to move on and leave his past behind him. Though I do still consider his past to still be a part of him. It will always be a part of him because it's something that happened with him. So that basically kind of brings the end to, like, Shadow's, like, story and everything. And as he was brought back into later games, they don't bring it up anymore and stuff. And he joins Gun. Like, he eventually joins Gun himself, which is shown in a bonus level of the game Shadow the Hedgehog, where he does, like, some training and everything like that, which sets up the events of Sonic 06 of him being part of Gun and everything. And of course, includes, once again, Team Dark with him, Rouge, and Omega, which was in Heroes, and then again explored in Sonic 06, and all that. So, only in the games, like, from Adventure 2 to Heroes to Shadow the Hedgehog actually explored Shadow's past, his character development, and all that. And they could bring this back into later stuff and material, given that it's probably going to be the subject of Sonic 3. Though I'm not 100% sure, but I already brought that up in, like, a previous video, talking about, like, the possibilities, endless possibilities of what could be in the, like, the movie and everything. And they don't even bring it up in, like, TV shows. I mean, they do bring it up in Sonic X, but that's, like, completely different, and I could talk about the comparisons of that show in, like, a different video, which it does, like, basically do the same thing Adventure 2 did, because it's a direct adaptation of Adventure 2. Because in Sonic X, like, which is an anime, they also dubbed it in English and stuff, though it's completely different. In the series, like, they ended up developing, like, things from Adventure and Adventure 2, which, of course, part of the second season of X was called the Shadow Saga, which took everything from Adventure 2 to fit in with the narratives of Sonic X story, with them, like, teleporting to the Earth and stuff. It fit in with that show's narrative, and played out the exact same way. And they eventually brought Shadow back in Season 3 during the Meteoric Saga and everything, though it's different because, like, it's not really different. It mainly fits in more of, like, of course, the show's narrative and plot and everything, and he's still in status and everything, and I like to imagine he survived the fall. Because given that Shadow's, like, the ultimate life form and stuff, I'm assuming he cannot die because of the, like, way he's created and that he's immune to a lot of things and all that, and, like, he cannot die. I don't think he can, like, die at all. Which is why I always like to imagine that he survived the fall, and you could say that Eggman ended up, like, rescuing him, though some people, like, very much doubt it, and they think it's only a way for, like, to boost Shadow's confidence, but, like, Sega didn't actually say it was not canon, so it's still canon to the entire series, and all that. And, of course, people had, like, the theories about, like, who's the actual life form, whether Shadow is the same Shadow from Adventure 2, etc., but, like, these are, again, just fan theories of what fans speculate and everything. Like, with the ultimate life form stuff, people are theorizing whether, like, Shadow's the ultimate life form or Sonic is the ultimate life form, thinking that they based the creation of Shadow off of Sonic and everything, which, if you go back into, like, a few, like, callbacks into, like, way previous games, like the classics and stuff, when we saw, like, of course, the murals on the walls of, like, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and all that, we actually kind of see a little bit of what could have been based off of, like, based Shadow off of, like, they could have, like, based it off of that and everything. Though I feel like, Shadow resembling Sonic is just entirely just a coincidence. I only think that way because, of course, the stuff took place, like, 50 years before, so, like, none of it would have actually, like, tied into, like, having to run into Sonic at all, because it takes place, like, 50 years prior. Because other than that, like, because if you, like, think about, like, if they were to include, like, Sonic, like, being there back then, they saw him and then based, like, Shadow off of Sonic, it would make, like, Sonic, like, over 50 years old and everything. So it wouldn't actually work. So I feel like just, Sonic and Shadow's resemblance is just entirely a coincidence. It's just coincidental. And there's also a callback in the game of Adventure 2 saying that, Sonic was, like, the real ultimate life form. Well, not the real ultimate life form, but, like, they end up, like, putting that, like, Shadow says to, like, Sonic, like, I found the real ultimate life form or something, or, like, I see the ultimate life form, or among those lines, I can't really remember, which led to people theorizing that Sonic's the actual life form, though I do believe Shadow to be, and everything, because they couldn't have based Shadow off of Sonic if like Sonic wasn't like there and everything, because Sonic's 15. Sonic's 15, Shadow was over 50, though looks about the same age as Sonic, because like I said, he don't age because of the way he was created. He's immortal. He's like ageless and everything. He don't age. He lives on forever, probably till the end of time. But there's also again the theory of like Shadow being like the real Shadow or the android or the clone or whatever, because when they introduced like the Shadow androids in like Heroes, people were speculating that the Shadow that comes back after Adventure 2 is nothing more than an android, which actually kind of like bothered me for a little bit, because I'm like, Sega's lying to us. But they didn't actually say that Shadow was like an android or anything, so it only kind of leads to speculation. And they already kind of confirmed at the end of Shadow the Hedgehog that Shadow is the real Shadow and not the android, not the clone, and everything like that. So it basically clears up that and everything like that. And like in later stuff, they don't bring up Shadow's story because he's moved on from his past. Like, I like to imagine he still thinks about his past, but not as much and all that. Because they don't bring it up in Sonic Boom, because he's not even involved in the show that much whatsoever. And in Prime, they don't bring it up because, of course, it's like a different story and everything. Though I must actually talk about this, because when I watched Sonic Prime Season 2, I binge-watched the entirety of Season 2 back in July. Like, I think it was about like a week or two after it came out, or maybe like just like a few weeks after. I can't really remember. But like when Sonic like Prime Season 2 came out, like I binge-watched the entirety of Season 2. My younger brother already watched it before I did, but I decided to just go check it out and everything, because I only watched like the first season and everything. I mean, I watched the first 6 episodes of the first season. I missed the last 2 episodes, though I do know what happens at the end of Season 1, Episode 8. But in the episode Avoid the Void, which is the first episode of the second season, they actually have something that very well resembles what happens in Adventure 2, where, spoilers for Sonic Prime Season 2 if you haven't already seen this, but what they end up showing is that after Shadow gets like these like things to put on his gloves and shoes, I don't know what you call them, that Nine created and stuff for like Sonic to go through different dimensions, like the Shadowverses. Sorry. But he had like these like little gadgets that had him like go through different shadow spaces, because there's like alternate dimensions in Prime. Like there's like the Pirate World, New York City, Boss Cage Maze. I don't know what you call the Pirate World. I can't remember the name of it. And then of course you have Shadow Space, and of course the Black Void on the bottom, which is supposed to be like the black hole, an abyss of nothing. And when Sonic and Shadow are fighting, of course, because they're rivals in this show and everything, though Sonic seems to be the one in the wrong a lot of the times, which I could talk about in a different video relating to Prime. But anyway, Sonic and Shadow are fighting over like the little things and everything. They were in the Shadow Space and everything after they went to Green Hills when it was lifeless, because when like Eggman was trying to get the prism, the Paradox Prism, like Sonic unintentionally broke it, which broke into all these different universes and took out his friends of his like universe and everything. And they have to bring back like all the like Paradox Prisms, or the little prisms, to fix their world and everything, which is why it's split up into 3 different worlds and everything, which sets up the show. But anyways, like Shadow tries going into one of the Shadow Spaces and everything, and he struggles to go through the one portal, and because of all the force, he blasts back and gets knocked unconscious, which it basically, like, it actually resembles very well of what happened at the end of Adventure 2. Like, when I watched it, like, actually, before I actually talk about it, like, I actually read the synopsis of the first, like, episode off of, like, Wikipedia and stuff when I was trying to learn about, like, Season 2. It didn't tell specifically that Shadow falls down. Like, it tells him he falls down into the black hole, but I didn't have, like, a visual of what it could have been. So when he gets knocked unconscious and is, like, going right down there, and then Sonic's like, Shadow, and goes down there because Shadow's knocked unconscious, he slams into one of the prisms, and he basically goes down to the, like, black hole in that area, and Sonic's like, Shadow! Shadow! And then sees Shadow knocked unconscious, falling downwards, and then Sonic goes down and then rescues him. It's like what the end of Adventure 2 could have been, because at the end of Adventure 2, Sonic couldn't save him, is what many people would claim, because I think it was because of all the force and stuff and everything. Like, I watched a fan animation called, like, Sonic Adventure 2 Reanimated, where they retold the events and everything and showed that, like, Sonic was unable to save Shadow when he was falling to the earth and apparently dying. But in this version, in Sonic Prime, like when Shadow's falling down, Sonic goes down there and he ends up like grabbing him and rescues him and everything. I couldn't believe they actually made a reference to Adventure 2 in a show that came out in 2023. I couldn't believe it. Like, it was actually really cool to watch and stuff. And of course, everyone talks about, of course, Sonic and Shadow's interactions in the show, but we could talk about that in a different video. So that basically wraps up me talking about Shadow the Hedgehog, about his backstory, and about his character development. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned.